no hard feelings. All right, folks. So we are officially recording, and I am Takeda King Peng. I am the Executive Director of the Women's Foundation of Florida, and I am so excited to have everyone here this evening to hear on this very timely process. No, this topic. Can you tell it's the end of a Monday? And I wanted to say Happy International Women's Day for everyone that's joining us. Today is the International Day to celebrate women. And I think it's actually interesting because it's very new in terms of folks in the USA really being aware of it. But in other countries and in Europe, it's like a huge, huge holiday. I remember my best friend in college was in Russia, and she's like, it's Women's Day. Everyone's giving me presents. So if we were in another country, you actually get gifts simply for being a woman. I kind of want to figure out how to start that here in the US. But they also have an International Men's Day. And so on International Women's Day, women get gifts, and then Men's Day is in June and men will get gifts. So it's very interesting that it's like all of these special days becoming a thing here in the US because of social media. My fun fact for the day. And with that, I'm going to launch a poll. We're going to ask everyone to just take a minute and fill it in. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just going to help our speaker this evening gauge a little bit about where everyone in the audience is. So it should be on your screen now. If you could go in, it is anonymous, so no one will see who is voting or putting for what.
What's shaking?
I'm on a Zoom call. I gotta mute.
I muted you, Lori. All right. Everybody have a chance to click. The second question is multiple choice, so you can click more than once. All right. I'm gonna close it here in the next 10 seconds. Oh, there's Sarah. Hi, Sarah. There should be a poll on your screen right now. If you could take a quick minute and fill that out. The second question is multiple choice. You can click as many as you'd like. It's not one or the other.
Got it. I'm on it. Hello, all.
Hi. All right, well, we're finishing that up. Since we are a smaller group tonight, I wanted to take the opportunity to just go around the room quickly. If you could introduce yourself, your name, and where you're located geographically this evening. Ooh, and we've got a kitty that's joining us. You like that I wave at the cat. Cats, dogs, and kids, I love them. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll, and I'm gonna ask Denise if you can get us started. Just introduce your name, where you're located. And if you pass it to someone else on the screen.
My name is Denise Mariani, and I am in Jupiter, Florida. And I'll pass over to Marie.
Oh, is that me? Okay. Mari Adam, I'm your speaker tonight. I'm in Boca.
And pass it to someone else?
Oh, I don't have everybody's name up. Latricia?
Hi, I'm Latricia Henry, and I'm in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I pass it over to Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan Jacoby. I'm also in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I will pass to Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Conley. I've recently changed my name, so my maiden name is still on there. Sarah Conley, and I'm in St. Pete, Florida. Good evening, ladies, and happy International Women's Day. Great to see all your smiling faces. Let me pass it to Parisa.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening. My name is Parisa, and I'm zooming in from Palm Beach County. And sometimes I'm in Washington, D.C., but I'm in Palm Beach County right now. And I will go to Sandy.
Hello, good evening. My name is Sandy, and I'm in Miramar, Florida.
Pass it to someone?
Oh, I don't, hold on. I have to, Emmy?
Hi, my name is Emmy Umezawa, and I'm actually from California. Marie is my mentor at Mercer Advisors, and I'm very interested in learning how to help women, so she invited me. And I will pass it on to Megan.
I think Megan already went, so why don't we go
Oh,
to
I'm sorry.
Lori? No, no
Thank you.
problem.
Okay, Lori Everett, Palm Beach Gardens, Florida.
You want, all right. Rose?
Hi everyone, my name is Rose Llanos and I'm based in Boca Raton, Florida. Nice to meet you all. Excited for tonight's session.
Awesome. And I apologize, I only see the letter P and the word cover.
Hi, yes, my name is Patrice Cover. I am in Green Acres, Florida.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrice. And M. Royce?
Hi, I'm Mickey Royce, and I am between Green Acres and Wellington in West unincorporated Lake Worth.
Awesome. I was wondering if that was you, Mickey. I didn't want to make assumptions.
That was me.
All right, wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and share the results of the poll now on screen. And Mari, you just let me know when you're ready for me to move that off.
Interesting. So we've got a lot of basic but ready to learn more. That's great. And the rest were a lot spread out, a lot of questions maybe about retirement, paying down debt. So it sounds like retirement and needing to invest. So those are good, gives us an idea of where everyone stands. That's good. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, and with that, I'm really excited to introduce our leader for the evening, Miss Mari Adam. She is a certified public accountant with Mercer Advisors and has donated her time and her energy this evening to speak with us. And so I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to see if I can do my screen here. See if we can get this to work. Perfect. Okay, so can everyone see the screen okay?
Looks good.
Good. Should I get rid of, can you see the gallery? Should I get rid of that or is that okay?
Nope, it looks good.
Perfect. Okay, so welcome everybody. Happy International Women's Day. And thank you for making time to join us. I know Mondays can be sometimes a little rough. They are for us a lot. And welcome my colleague, Emmy, who's here tonight. We work for the same firm, which does work across the US. So it's always nice to have someone from our home court there. And welcome everyone. And thank you for sharing your comments about your interests. So that's great. So what we're going to talk about tonight is something that is very critical to women, but it is something that is rarely talked about in polite company. So yes, it could be sex, but that's not what it is. It's money. And money is something that women really don't talk about enough, so they don't always understand. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight. And the timing of this conversation is very deliberate because, as all of you know, we've already gone through about a year of COVID-19, hopefully not another year. But this has been a trial for many women. Women have really had a lot of financial hardship through COVID. And what we found through research is at this point, women are coming toward the end of the COVID pandemic, or what we hope is the end of the COVID pandemic, really with a new resolve to understand more about their money. And we'll talk about a little what COVID has done to women, but why it's so important to take the reins. And what we want to talk about tonight are easy steps you can take to put yourself back in control of your money. So let's get started here. Okay, I hope you like the superhero picture. I think this is great because it's really about taking back control of your money and how to become your own money superhero. So let's talk a little bit as context about what has happened to women with COVID. I'm sure you see this in your own life or people you know. This has been called the nation's first she-cession because it's been a female-driven recession. And these job losses have really hit women disproportionately because they've been so strong in the fields of maybe restaurant, retail, caregiving, hospitality, and areas which are predominantly women with women employment. And in fact, what we've seen also is that women who have higher incomes have had an easier time working remotely. So they have been less impacted. But people with lower incomes have been severely impacted by COVID. And those are the people that have tended to have lost their jobs. And in fact, if you look at who's making minimum wage in this country, it's 2/3 female. So COVID has really been the first crisis that has attacked women in the industries where they predominate. We've also seen women have money worries, the childcare issues, which have pushed women to either cut back their hours or exit the workforce entirely. It's been devastating to many women across the country. You've had health concerns. Women are very concerned about losing ground financially. They're concerned about protecting their credit. And often they've been raiding their retirement or savings accounts to make ends meet. So I don't think we can ever protect someone entirely from financial crises, but what we want to do and what we've learned from COVID is how you can prepare a little better for next time, how you can protect yourself, and how you can proactively address some of the areas that made women so vulnerable with COVID-19. So that's what we're going to talk about and get into a new path of money awareness that you can use to protect yourself. So here we go. We're going to talk about 5 simple steps that you can take. And the first one is really the most simple. I call it take ownership. 95% of all women will be solely responsible for their own or their family's finances at some point in their lives. And I think that's pretty sobering. But if you think about it, what does it mean to take ownership? Let's say you're the boss of a company, you're the owner. It means that you're going to collect the facts, you're going to make the decisions, you're going to implement your vision. And this is really the very simple but totally essential step we have to get across to women, is you need to become an owner and take responsibility for these money decisions in your life. Here's why. Many women outsource their money decisions to someone else. Usually it's a male in the family. Could be a father, could be a brother, could be a partner, could be a husband, could be an older son. This is very common. In fact, it's more than half of women are outsourcing their money decisions. And what I'd like to share with you is when you outsource your money decisions and you don't take control of your money, somebody else is making decisions for you. Decisions like quitting a job you really don't like. Maybe it's when you're going to retire, or it could be putting your kids through college, helping your parents, starting a business, or leaving a bad relationship. And for me, this is really something near and dear to my heart. When I was very young, my parents divorced. My mom remarried. And this person she remarried turned out to be someone who was not the greatest person, who made a very unsafe home for my mom and for me and my brother. And when I was about probably 15, I said to her, you know, why don't you leave him? And she said, I'm too old. Now at the time she was probably about 40, young 40s. And I think what she really probably meant to say is, I don't know if I can make enough money to support myself or you kids. So she stayed with him until the day she died. This is all about taking control. So when you have control, those decisions become yours to make. If you're not in charge of your money, somebody else is going to make them for you. And I can't underline enough how important this is for women to start learning about money and start making these decisions. So the baby boom generation, which is my generation, a little over half of the women delegate their money decisions to somebody else. When you go to younger women, like my daughter, who's in her late 20s, or millennials, the percentage of women who are delegating decisions to a male in the household goes up. So what we're seeing is from the baby boom generation, which is mine, younger women are actually less likely to want to be interested in money and make those decisions. And I'll tell you another story. About a year ago, or before COVID, I went to an executive council event down in Fort Lauderdale. And there was about probably 120 women. It was a big turnout. It was women in STEM. So you had a lot of women in technology and IT. I mean, these were very bright, very educated women, a room full of them. And I was sitting at a table with about 8 women. And we went around the table and one said, I'm an IT director for this, and I have my own business and I do that. And it came around to me, I think I was last. And they said, what do you do? And I said, well, I do personal financial planning and investments. And one of the women who was an IT director, she said, oh, I don't know anything about that. I just leave it up to my husband. Okay, and I get it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if there's one thing the takeaway is to really have control of these issues, you need to be making the decisions, you need to be engaged. Otherwise, somebody else is going to tell you when you do these things, and that's not good. So anyway, so that's number 1, take ownership. Simple step, but really critical. Okay, so step number 2, make a plan. And this does not need to be complicated. So my example for you here is, let's say you're going to go on a car trip. Now, of course, we have GPS, makes life much easier. Let's say you're in Florida, but the first question is, where are you starting from on this car trip? You might be starting, let's say, from Miami. Okay. The financial equivalent of where are you starting from is to do a net worth statement. Net worth statement, you can write it by hand, doesn't need to be fancy. It just says, here's what I have, here's what I owe, and here's my net worth, which is what I own minus what I owe and what I have left in assets. So it's just saying I'm 35 years old, and this is what I've got in the bank, this is what I have in investments, where you're starting from. The next thing we'd want to ask you is, where do you want to go to? You might say, oh, I'm driving in my car to Los Angeles. Financially, exact same thing. You'd say, I want to retire when I'm 55. I want $75,000 a year of income. I want $10,000 a year to go on some really great vacations. And I need another $10,000 to help take care of my mom. Same thing. Where are your goals? Where do you want to go? Those are your goals. And that's part of your financial plan. How about if you're driving, you need fuel for the journey? Same thing in finance. What's your fuel? It's what are you making? What's coming in the door in terms of money? What's going out the door? That's your spending plan or your budget. That's going to tell us what you make minus what you spend, how much is left for you to save. And we're going to factor that into your plan. Obviously, the more you save each year, the faster you're probably going to get to your goal. And the same is true whether you're driving the car or doing a financial plan. The last thing here is, how fast are you going to drive? Let's say you're going from Miami to LA. How fast do you drive? How many hours a day are you on the road? And what are the road conditions like? In our world, in the financial world, that's the equivalent of how are you going to invest? If you're going to drive 20 miles an hour from Miami to Los Angeles, it's going to take you a while to get there, right? If you drive 70 miles an hour, or whatever the speed limit is now, you're going to get there faster. If it's raining, you're going to have to slow down. This is a perfect analogy for finance. And we're going to talk later on about investing and how you invest. But just think, when you put this financial plan together, this is really all there is to it. Where are you starting from? Where do you want to end up? How much fuel do you have to put in your tank? And how fast are you going to drive? When it's a financial plan, you can just take a pad and a paper and write it down. Does not have to be fancy, no skill necessary. And Takeda will tell you, there's a couple handouts I brought. One is a back and front list of free financial resources. And you can look on there. They have templates for budgeting. They have templates for net worth statements. So you don't have to be, a rocket scientist to do some of this. But here's what's really critical. 2 things very important. We know that when you write this plan down on paper, you are much more likely to reach your goals. Just like probably any plan that you do, whether it's exercising or something else, writing it down means that you are going to feel more confident about being able to reach your goals. It means that you are going to be able to save more money, or I should say that people who do have a financial plan do save more money. It's just something about writing those goals down that makes it much more likely that you reach your goals. So having this plan already makes you more likely to be successful. So that's step 2. Here's step 3. This is kind of like the Nike, just do it. Okay, so we're at that stage now. We just want you to get moving. And there's probably a list of like 100 things I could tell you that you need to do, but we're going to keep it super simple because a lot of those only apply to certain people. If you have your own business, there's a list for you. If you're a stay-at-home parent, there's a list for you. If you work for a corporation, there's a list for you. So we're going to look at some of these universals that apply to everybody and keep it real simple. So the first one is, let's start an emergency reserve. You've probably heard of this. This is just where we tell people, try to save 3 to 6 months spending and put it into an account. So if you lose your job, it's there and it's available for you. And the one lesson we learned with COVID that was really worth repeating is lots of people do not have any emergency reserve. Sometimes they just can't save enough money, and we understand that. But if that's not your situation, you really want to focus on getting some money into this emergency reserve, ideally 3 months of spending or something like that. So if you lose your job, you've got money to fall back on. Because what did we learn with COVID is how many people called me to say, I can't get through on the Florida unemployment website. I can't get paid. And I don't know, you probably all know better than I did how long it took for some of those people to get a check, but it was way too long. So you need an emergency reserve, put some money aside. We know that even people with resources forget to do it, so it's really important. So do that. Number 2 is what I call right size your spending. Really simple. This is what you make. This is what you spend. We want what you make to be more than what you spend. If what you spend is more than you make, then you're not going to be creating wealth. I always look at that like you've got a shovel in your hands and you're sitting there digging into the dirt and digging that hole deeper and deeper and deeper. And we see an awful lot of people, our clients, who do that. So look at what you make, look at what you spend, and try to make sure that about 10 to 15% of what you make goes into savings. Now, I know that's not always possible. So what we want to focus on is setting up a habit of saving, just like a habit of funding your emergency reserve. If you can't put enough money in right away, that's fine. Start with something you can do. It may be $25 a pay period or $50 a pay period or something like that, and start building this habit of getting it into savings. So right sizing your spending means you're trying to take 10 to 15% of what you make and get it into savings. And if you need help with your budget, there's some good resources in there. I personally use Quicken. A lot of people use Mint, but there's a lot of online apps available to help you figure out where your money's going. And this is a really common problem. So if it's your problem, don't feel guilty. Here's my analogy for this. If we're in the grocery store and I've got a cart full of stuff, and you said to me, how much does that stuff cost in your cart? I might say, oh, 25 bucks. The reality is it's probably 50. We know that people are really bad at estimating what they're spending or what's in the cart or what's on their credit card or anything like that. They tend to think they're only spending about half of what they're really spending. So if you've got a problem setting aside money, start trying to control your budget by writing down what you spend. There's a lot of useful tools for you. So take a look. The other thing here is start now. The sooner you start through the magic of compounding, the less you need to save. And it's truly amazing. And I wrote this down so I got it right. If you save for 10 years from age 20 to age 30, you will end up with more money than if you save that amount over 30 years from age 30 to age 60. So it's how fast you get the money in to start growing makes you save more. So even if you can start with a little bit of money now, start and get that good habit of putting money into your savings. Let it start compounding, let it start growing. That's really the secret, is start saving now. The last thing we're going to talk about here is put your savings on autopilot. We used to say to people, pay yourself first. I don't know if you've heard that same principle. It just means that once your paycheck goes in your bank account, it's gone, right? There's nothing left. So someone will say, I'll save money at the end of the month. There's nothing left to save. It's gone. You've spent it. That's just human nature. So the trick here is make sure the money gets taken out before it hits your checking account. If you work, you can do that through a 401k. If you don't have a workplace plan, you can fund an IRA or a Roth IRA, and we'll talk later about what those are. But try to get that money in monthly or automatically so it never gets in your bank account where you can spend it. If you own your own business, there are some phenomenally good options to save money as a business owner and give you huge deductions. You can also save in your personal account if you don't have anything at work. If you've got kids, you might want to save in a 529 account. Of course, in Florida, we've got the Florida Prepaid, which is a great plan. You can also save in a 529 account. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. But going back to that starting now, just a little, I try not to give you too many statistics, but this is a good one. If you start saving in a Roth IRA, you can only save $6,000 a year right now. But if you start saving at age 22 and you save that amount each year, you will end up with almost $2 million by the time you retire. So you don't have to save a lot, but the sooner you start saving, the faster it's going to grow, the more you're going to end up with. So if you're not into a savings habit now, try to set one up, do $50, whatever it is you can afford, and get started. It's a really good habit. Okay, that's get moving. We're going to go on to the really important part for women here. And this, after I've told you to save, right? Now I'm going to say, stop saving, start investing. And here's where we really get into the crux of the matter of why women have a hard time. For all of you with questions about saving for retirement, this is where it all comes into play. So here we go. You've heard about the gender pay gap, I'm sure. And on average, women make about 82 cents for every dollar earned by a man. That's an average. You will see parts of the population much, much, much less, and some that are a little bit higher. But in general, women are making about 82 cents for every dollar that a man earns. Doesn't sound like much, right? 18 cents, right? No big deal. Over a 40-year career, so from 22 to 62 or 25 to 65, however you want to slice it, that adds up to $900,000 more that a man will earn than you. 900,000. That's a lot of money. What happens is because men make more, they end up saving more, and it leads into what we call the wealth gap. Not just the pay gap, which is your salary, but now we're talking about the wealth gap. And this means that for every dollar some guy has got in a bank account or a brokerage account, you on average have 32 cents. And here's the problem. Women live longer than men. Therefore, they need more money over their lifetime to spend, not less. But because men make more, and we're going to look at an example in a second, because they start out by making more and a series of other events, women end up with 1/3 of the wealth on average that men do. So what we're going to talk about now is how do we attack this? How do we start closing this wealth gap, which is so serious? Okay. So let's walk through an example. You can look at yourself and say, do I do any of these things? Does my mom do any of these things? Does my sister do some of these things? You're going to start seeing a lot of things that women do that make it hard to close this wealth gap. So we said that men make more. on average, they're going to make $900,000 more than you. So that's their earnings. It's much higher than you. If you both save 10% of salary, they'll still end up with $400,000 more in wealth. Why? Because 10% of a bigger number is more than 10% of a smaller number. So even if you both save 10%, men will end up at the end of their career, if they do it right, with about $2 million saved. You as a female will have about $1,600,000. So we've already got a gap of about $400,000. If the man saves 10% of salary, like many women, maybe you don't want to save that much. And that's one of the problems. Women don't always save enough. You only save 5% of salary. You will end up, for his $2 million in wealth, you'll end up with about $800,000. So the gap is getting wider. He makes more, he saves the same percentage, you've got a gap. If you don't save the same percentage, the gap gets bigger. And we know one of the problems is women don't always save enough in percentage terms. Sometimes they can't afford to. Sometimes it's behavioral. And here's the real clincher, the last bullet point here. If you as a woman save less, and then you take that money and you want a low risk, which means low growth investment, and you put it in some kind of maybe a bank product or something that doesn't pay much, the man will end up with $2 million, like in all these examples, and you're going to have $343,000. That's a huge gap now. He's got 2 million, you've got 343,000. To translate this into income, his income from his investments will be about $6,600 a month, $6,600. Your income from your investments will be about $1,000 a month. So this is what happens with the wealth gap, because we know women make less, they frequently save less, and they frequently invest less for growth. They will end up with a fraction of what men do. And this assumes this woman stays in the workplace. We also know that when women drop out of the workplace to care for parents or children, the average gap is 12 years. They will have much less than this because they're not working these 40 years, they're working 12. So I don't want to depress anyone. We're going to talk about what we do about this. But the numbers are really sobering, and you can see how it compounds. Make less, save less, invest less for growth. So with each step, the amount available to you gets less and less. So let's talk about what we're going to do. It is possible to close this wealth gap. It takes a lot of focus. First, you want to maximize what you earn. I know that sounds obvious, but we're going to talk about some steps, and I know groups like the Women's Foundation of Florida are going to focus on a lot of these salary techniques and career techniques to let you earn your potential maximum. Women, you really need to save probably a higher percent of salary. We told you 10 to 15% is your goal. If you start late, you probably should try to save more. But you know, the bottom line is you do what you can, and every year try to bump it up. So if you're saving 3%, try to make it 4. If it's 4, try to make it 5. But know that you really want to get up to that 10 to 15% of savings is really where you need to be. Here's something I say, I don't want to sound non-PC or whatever, but weigh carefully your absences from the workforce. You know, the caveat is everyone's got to find their own path, and I get it. I've got 2 kids. I was working, I ran my own business, I worked for other people, but be very careful when you're weighing that absence from the workplace. You may want to look at entrepreneurship or some kind of side gig. You also should look at how you can save, even if you're a stay-at-home partner. There's ways that you can do that. Even if you're not earning money, you can still put money into your savings accounts and your retirement accounts. So don't take your foot off the gas. It's really important, even if you're out of the workforce, to keep pushing to get money into your plan. Most important probably is here, invest for long-term growth. Learn, there's plenty of resources available online. Use a financial advisor. Get good information, because far too often women like these low risk, low return strategies. And unfortunately, what we know is these low risk strategies frequently can be the riskiest of all because you just fail to grow your money. And when you fail to grow your money, you will run out. So don't be afraid of investing, get some good advice and invest for growth. And lastly, stick to your long-term plan. Here's an example. Last year, we all went through COVID. We saw the market tank in March. And I had some people came to me and they were very nervous, and I absolutely understand. My job as an advisor is usually try to get them to stay on target and on their plan. And I'm proud to say when they did, they would come back later and say, thank you so much for talking me out of doing what I almost did. You really need to stick with that plan. I know sometimes that's hard for women. So get some good advice from an advisor and make sure you just stick with it. Don't buy high, sell low, stick with that plan. Okay, so we're at the end here, and then I want to hear if you've got questions or whatever. Here's a fun step. Step 5 is invest in yourself. This is something I got to tell you, I probably am not good at. Like a typical woman, it's the kids, it's the job, it's everything else. I'm always last. Don't do like I do like I say. Make time for your financial wellness. If you're in a partnership, make sure you sit down like once a month or something and talk about your shared goals and your budget. If it's just you, that's fine. Sit down every couple of weeks, every month, and look at what you've spent, what you've made, how things are doing. You don't need to go into a lot of detail, but do make time to just keep up with that financial paperwork. A lot of this is just housekeeping. Procrastinating is not good. If you get a 401k statement, look at it, occasionally. You don't have to look at it every month, but a couple of times a year and make changes. Make sure you invest in your education and your earning potential. And there's these amazing statistics now that women are actually getting the majority of higher education degrees. And in more than 50% of families, women are the primary breadwinner. So your most valuable investment is you. So make sure you do invest in yourself. Keep up your networking, position yourself for that next opportunity. And don't be afraid to look at something like entrepreneurship. I know it can seem scary if you've been working for someone else, but I know the Women's Foundation has a lot of entrepreneur members. And we saw something amazing last year. Even in a year with COVID, 2020, there were twice as many businesses started as the year before, which just shows people, when one door closes, they're going to try to open another door. And we know that women have about 40% of the businesses in the United States. They are, especially in the state of Florida, we have a lot of women entrepreneurs, and about 60% of all those new businesses are women of color starting them. So don't be afraid of being an entrepreneur. It is a great way to create wealth. And when one door closes, just remember to open the next one. So we're going to do a quick wrap up here. I'm going to go through the steps, and then I'd love to hear your questions or observations. So here's just the 5 steps. The first and most important is take ownership. That means you have to be in charge of your money and make sure your name is on those accounts. You know where they are, you know what's in them, you know how to get in them online. Don't leave it up to anyone else. Do it yourself. Number 2 is make a plan. It can be super simple, but take a piece of paper and write it down, because we know that having a plan really helps you save more and reach your goals. Step 3, get moving. That just means work on the basics. There's a lot of guidance online. If you don't know how to do this, there's some great resources online, but get that emergency fund going. Start paying yourself first. Things we didn't talk about, look into maybe some basic estate planning and some insurance and stuff like that that you need. It's not that hard to do, and there is a lot of information you can get online. Number 4, stop saving and start investing. This is probably the one thing we see women do. Even when they save, they let it sit in a bank account earning nothing. You could have $1 million and you're going to earn like 19 bucks. So you've got to step away from that and really start trying to invest. Lastly, invest in yourself. Take time to manage your money. It doesn't take a lot of time, but don't procrastinate. Just look at it, get help, and you can become your own money superhero. So I'd love to hear your questions. I hope it maybe inspired you to think a little bit about money and take charge. So do we have any good questions in the chat or any observations?
I'm looking. We have Denise says, does the 3 to 6 months of emergency funds need to be in traditional savings, or can it be in some other vehicle that earns a little more interest?
That is such a good question, and we get asked that a lot. The traditional answer is it should be in savings or cash. I would tell you that I would cheat and put it in other things that have more of a return, because I do not like to sit on a lot of cash earning nothing. So we have people who set up home equity lines of credit on their home. That would have worked well, like in 2008 as well, when people needed money out of their home and they couldn't get it. So if you have a home equity line of credit that's already set up, you could draw on that. You can draw from a credit card, but of course it's very expensive. Sometimes you can borrow from some of your own accounts, your retirement accounts or other accounts. The best that I would recommend is just a personal investment account with pretty conservative investments. That might be some bonds or dividend paying stocks. You can use that money. You do run the risk. The value goes up and down with time. But I think it's a really good question, because personally, I don't like to hold too much cash with no return. So I think you're really looking in the right direction there.
And then Sarah Connolly asks, is there a smart amount of debt to have? For example, carrying some debt, but pay it off often.
You can. I mean, I think most certified financial planners like me would be very comfortable if you use credit cards, but pay them off. I think mortgage debt can be a very good debt to have now because it's low cost. And there's many people who can have a mortgage on their home, invest their money, and end up making more than they're paying on their mortgage, especially given the tax advantages that some people have with a mortgage. That said, you have to be careful. If you have money on a credit card and you're paying 16%, that's not good. If you have too much in student loans, it's not that the interest rate is that high, but it takes you too long to pay them off. That would be a problem. So I would, car loans are kind of in that same category. So I think as long as your debt is modest and it's low cost debt, especially mortgage debt, which personally I do not have a problem with when it's done well, I think it's a good part of your financial plan. I've seen some people take their money and pay off all their debt. And where I have an issue with that, when there is a crisis like a COVID or a 2008, recession, they don't have any more cash. They used it all to pay down debt. So don't do that. I think it's always wise to keep some of your cash on hand where you can use it, because what we found when there's a financial crisis, it's very hard to get cash out of your house or out of other assets. So, moderation is probably the way to go here, but that's a really good question.
Right. Are there any other questions? You can unmute yourself and ask. Yeah. All right. I did see there's a couple of comments in here. One is Emmy shares that she's been using Mint and she loves to be able to see the groceries, the fund money, the budget, and being able to look at the app at the end of the month to find out how much left to spend.
Mint is great. Yeah. One of the biggest problems, like when we meet with people to do retirement planning, and I know a lot of people are interested in retirement, one of the first questions we'll say is, well, what do you think you're spending every year? What do you think you're going to need when you retire? And more than half of people will say, I don't know. So if that's where you are, don't feel bad. You're in the majority. Most people really don't know. They don't pay attention to what they spend. And it's helpful to get a better handle, like Emmy's suggestion of using Mint or some other plan. It's really a good idea because frequently you're spending more than you think, or you're spending it on things that you don't even care about and not on the things that do matter. So no one's going to try to get you to spend less necessarily, but we want to make sure if something's really important to you, that's where your money's going. It's not going into something you really don't care about, and then you don't have it for the things that do matter.
I have a question.
Sure.
So if you want to start, like you said, it's better to do an investment versus saving. How will you start, like going towards investment? What would be the step one? What type of investment, or go to your regular bank or call financial institution? How to go about it?
I think first you want to learn a little bit of the background, and the good news is there is so much available online on that worksheet. It's the back and front one, which looks, it's called, I think, Personal Financial Resources. I don't know if you can see mine. There's some good sites I put down that have all kinds of free information, and they'll start explaining what's the difference maybe between a stock or a bond and different type of investments. So that's a good way to start. You always want to match your investment with your time horizon. So if you say to me, I want to save money for retirement, and that's not for 10 years or 20 years, that tells me that you should be using a long-term growth investment for that part of your savings because it's for long-term. If you said to me, I need money because I'm going to buy a house in 3 months, I would tell you, make sure you just put it in a bank account or a cash account, because you can't risk it. 3 months is like right now, you can't take any risk. So that one of the key lessons is to make sure that the investment you choose is suited to your goal for that money, both in terms of when you need the money, how much time you have, and how much risk you can take. So very short-term goals, think no risk or very little risk. Long-term goals like saving for retirement many years away, you can take more risk because you need the growth. You want your money to grow. So always ask yourself, or write down on your financial plan maybe, what you're saving for and when you need the money and how much risk you can take. I think that's a good way. But generally, the longer the time horizon, the more risk and the more growth you want. The shorter the time horizon, the more careful you need to be to not take risk, because you could lose your money over the shorter term. So I don't know if that helps you, but that's kind of the way we would look at it. And there's some really good resources online that will walk through maybe helping you explore some of your goals.
Yeah, that sounds
And they're
great.
free.
And because I heard you saying take it out of the savings account, because when you're not making money, and try to put it somewhere where it's making money. So that's like along the line that I'm thinking, okay, so let me take it out of the saving and put it in an investment that it's my savings that I want to have it, but let's make a little bit more money than having it in my regular savings. So I think that made a lot of sense when you said that.
Yeah, it's hard. If it's your short-term savings, like your emergency fund, you lose your job, you're fixing your car, that should be in the bank, in something safe. It's not going to earn much, unfortunately, now, but it's there if you need it, and that's the purpose. Where we see women making this mistake is when you look at their long-term retirement money, it is inappropriate. It's in very short-term investments when it should be in long-term. Or another thing that I'll see very typically with women, they'll say, oh, I've got 25,000 in the bank, I'm saving it, that's my cushion. And then you'll go see they've got $25,000 in credit card debt they haven't paid off. So they're making zero and they're paying like 16%. That's kind of what gets in your head. And we do see that a lot with women. And that's something you want to address and make sure you pay down this costly debt if you have it, because it's like I always tell people, you're in business, you're borrowing money at 16% in your business, then you're investing it, making 1%. You can't stay in business long like that. And that's a very common female pattern of savings. And you have to be conscious of it and try to fix it if you can.
Thank you.
And Parisa would like you to speak to the topic of using a fiduciary advisor, and how can one identify whether someone is or isn't, and what are the benefits versus whether or not it's important?
That's a fabulous question. We have been, there has been debate over this for years. Basically, a fiduciary, in our firm, we are fiduciaries. It means that we have to put your interests ahead of our own. Many people in the investment world are not fiduciaries. They follow a different standard, which is what's called a suitability standard. And I can give you an example to explain. You know, the simple is just ask someone, are you a fiduciary? They should say, yes, I'm a fiduciary. No, I'm not a fiduciary. But in general, anybody who's a registered investment advisor like we are, we're registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. They are fiduciaries, but just ask, say, are you a fiduciary? The difference, and I know this seems a little technical, but a fiduciary advisor would say, Takeda, here's 3 different investments that would be suitable for you. This one, I'm going to earn 10 times as much. It's going to cost you 10 times as much. This one, it saves you a lot of money. I would have to tell you that. Don't do this one because it's going to cost you 10 times as much. If you follow a suitability standard, I could say to you, here's 3 investments. They're all suitable for you, period. Which would you rather have? It's not a lie. They're all suitable for you, but there is a difference between putting someone's interests ahead of yours and really telling them the difference in investments and just telling them the truth. But sometimes, you know, the truth really doesn't fully disclose all the facts. And that would be saying they're all suitable for you, but I'm not going to tell you that one of them is much more costly. That would be a kind of a typical example. So you should try to work with someone who's a fiduciary. Just ask someone. They should also give you their disclosure information. And if you read it, it should say they're a fiduciary. But that's a really good question.
Great. Next, Denise asks, in regard to retirement, how can I figure out how much money I may need for medical expenses as I age?
Other than lots, you know, Fidelity does a survey every year, and you can find it online where I hope I'm not, Emmy, you probably remember better than me. They say for a couple, I think your lifetime medical expenses are what, like 250,000. I'm probably forgetting it. It's a lot. I don't even know if it's helpful to look at it because it will just scare you. I would say you do need extra money to provide for your medical expenses. We know as you age, medical expenses take up more and more and more of your spending. You also want to think about either some kind of long-term care insurance or moving into some kind of retirement care community that might cover those expenses. So it is a lot. Don't be overwhelmed. I think sometimes when you look at the numbers and we tell you what you need, it disincentivizes people. That's just so overwhelming. They say, oh, I'm not going to bother to save because I'm not going to end up with that much money. Don't take it that way. Just do try to save, but it's probably running, you know, somewhere like a working person, $15,000 a year possibly is not unreasonable. So what you're paying working probably won't go down now when you retire. People think when they go on Medicare, their medical expenses will go away. That's no longer true. So just, you're going to be paying forever.
All right. And last question I see in the chat is, how can you tell which financial advisor is trustworthy? Are there some advisors who only deal with the very wealthy folks? Are there others who would give attention to a more moderate investor?
There are, you know, it really goes from A to Z. There are some questionnaires, and I did not put them on this resource list. Next time I'll remember to, that will give you questions you can ask an advisor. So that's one way. I've always been a fee-only advisor. I'm not going to tell you that's the only way you should work, but that means I've never done commission work. I've always done fee work, but I personally believe in that. You will find advisors with integrity in all different types of firms. But you do need to do your homework. They have disclosures you should read. You want to know how they charge. You want to know what their credentials are and say, what is a typical client? If you work with $20 million clients and I have 200,000, well, you're not a good fit, right? But there's all kinds of people out there. You can get some good referrals. I believe I did put them on the list from the CFP board, which will tell you who's a certified financial planner in your area, like we are. The FPA, Financial Planning Association, will also give you names. Do your homework, kick the tires. Don't feel embarrassed asking questions. We get asked them all the time. How do you charge? How much this? How much that? Just ask them. You should do your due diligence. Ask before you find out when it's too late. You know, we know there's people out there who aren't good, so try to weed them out by asking a lot of questions.
Okay, last question, because then we're out of time, is there's a lot of talk about index universal life insurance policies. Many investment advisors seem to not like life insurance. Would you please share your thoughts on these? Are they a tax advantage option because they seem so attractive?
This is going to be my personal opinion. You will ask 10 people, you'll get different views, but in my 30 some years of practice, I would tell you that investors tend to be most disappointed with insurance products they bought in their younger days that did not do what they were told they would do. And they find themselves at a point where they've got a lot of money into it. It did not do what it was supposed to, and they're very, very disappointed. Now, that does not mean you should not have insurance. There's a lot of good insurance out there, especially life insurance, which I think you should have. Personally, totally personal opinion, I would prefer to put my investments in real investments, stocks and bonds, and use insurance just for insurance, but that's me. So other people will give you different views, but I would say if you're going to buy life insurance, ask a lot of questions because it is a complex investment type. It's very complex. There's a lot of moving parts, and most people who sell it don't understand it, and the people who buy it don't understand it. Personally, my thing is I don't buy stuff I don't understand or I can explain to a client. So.
All right, ladies. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us this evening. Again, happy International Women's Day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you all for your time. I know it's Monday and everyone wants to probably go do something more fun. So thank you.
Well, thanks for putting this together.
Thank you, Mari. It was very helpful. We appreciate it.
Very welcome. Nice to meet everybody.
Bye.
Happy Women's Day.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.